Good morning, my fellow Canadians. Forgive me if I ramble a little on this one. The theme is predominantly financial, but there'll be some little side trips in this. Years back, a friend of mine worked at one of the boards of education. I've mentioned this in past videos. When the budget meetings came due and next year's budget was being proposed, if they had a budgetary surplus, they would rush to spend it on things they really didn't need, but they did not want to come into the new fiscal year with a budgetary surplus. Because, just for the sake of round numbers, let's say their annual budget was $100,000. If they spent 80 and they had a $20,000 budgetary surplus, the bean counters would look at this and say, well, you asked for 100,000, but you only spent 80. So since you have 20, we're only going to give you 60 this year. So there's your $80,000. That's just, like I said, arbitrary figures. So they would rush to spend that surplus so that they would come with bare cupboards and say, we need this money. Now, a smart budgetary system would have been, if you have a budgetary surplus, keep it put by. You spent $80,000 out of your $100,000 this year. We're still going to give you $100,000 for the next budgetary year. Anything left over, put that into your budgetary surplus. That's a slush fund for contingencies. If you get a high dollar purchase that must be done, you have money put by to handle this. And if you don't, then allow it to build. And then eventually there will come a year where you will have a sufficient surplus that we don't have to give you anything this year because you have enough surplus to cover your whole year. The surpluses you've built up, you see my point. That would have been a smart budgetary system. As it was, the way the system was set up, it encouraged the different departments to spend anything they had left over before the new fiscal year. You look at our Liberal government. They spent the cupboards bare. Now we're in the midst of a pandemic. Now we're in the midst of a financial crunch. Where's the money? All the money they've collected, the budgetary surplus they inherited from the previous Conservative government, where is it? All gone. Now is the time where there should be budgetary restraint. There should be an austerity program put into place. If you had a true government, they would be saying everybody in government is going to take a pay cut. Everybody from the top down, highest to the lowest. Now, I worked in a company once and the market tanked. Very little business coming in. And the boss said to everybody, look, everybody, you got to take a 5% pay cut. Everybody, from the top down, from El Presidente down to the lowest worker, you're going to take a 5% pay cut. In recompense, what we're going to do is cut back on your hours. So you'll have more free time, but you're going to take home less pay. Everybody understood this. And because you were taking the hit along with us, okay, I understand that. It's basic finances. If you don't have the money, you can't pay the wages. We understand that. So you have to cut back, you have to cut back. But everybody takes the hit. What did the Liberals do? In the midst of all this, the Liberal cabinet voted themselves a raise. Now, if you're not outraged at this, I don't know how stupid you can be, but they voted themselves a raise. And then, to compound the stupidity, let's double down on idiocy. To compound the stupidity, their carbon tax, which they've sold to the Canadian public as an environmental initiative to help save the country. It is a money grab. This is not going to benefit the people of Canada. I thought that issue would kill them in the last election. So in the midst of all this, there's going to be a carbon tax increase. I can't understand how anybody can vote Liberal. I watched Ontario, one of the richest provinces in the world, in the country rather, one of the wealthiest, most productive provinces, the manufacturing hub of Canada. And I watched it reduced fiscally to the status of some third world dictatorship under Liberal 16 years of Liberal fiscal stupidity. I don't know how many people are aware of this. Do you know that they were so desperate for money, Kathleen Wynne and her Liberal government actually floated the idea of taxing wood-burning appliances? Think about that. If you had a wood-burning fireplace, wood-burning stove, and there are people up north where that is their primary means of heat. I know these people. I've seen these people. Can you imagine a government inspector coming over and saying, well, how much firewood do you burn a year? Well, we're going to tax you based on what our estimated projection of your emissions. Now, that one fortunately got killed. Even for the Liberals, that was found to be too bloody stupid and unworkable. But they were so desperate for money that they were always looking for ways to pick the taxpayer's pocket. Taxing wood-burning appliances. Who in their right mind would even consider this? But that's the Liberals. That's how out of touch they are with hard reality. Because they needed more money. So they were always searching for, and I love this bit of Liberal newspeak, revenue tools. Now, they didn't say taxes because we were being taxed into the ground. No, we need more revenue tools. Let us discover new revenue tools. If you cut through the bullshit, what it came down to is, how much more can we pick your pockets for? Now, the federal Liberals have done a great job of that with the carbon tax and sold it to the Canadian people with the compliance of the media that this is an environmental initiative, and that's a load of crap. It's to pick your pocket for more money. I've gone on about this time and time again. I don't mind paying taxes. I do not mind paying taxes for the privilege of living in this country. Well, I'm retired now, but I didn't mind it because if the money was spent in Canada for Canadians, it benefited us all. And that was my contribution to our country and our society. And yet the Liberal government just keeps pissing away Canadian taxpayers' dollars out of country for asinine initiatives. Is there any oversight over this money? Is there any evidence that the money sent out is being applied where they said it would be applied? Or is it just some moron comes up to them and says, can you help us out? Some third world moron comes out and says, can you help us out and give us money for gender equality studies? Oh, yeah, sure. The Canadian taxpayers will pay for that. Now is the time for a responsible government to cut off the taps, turn them off. Let's assess what's going on in Canada. Let's assess how much money we need in the country to help us in this time of financial crisis. Nope, that would be too much like common sense. And yet, people still vote Liberal. I have a grudging admiration for the effectiveness of the Liberal propaganda machine. In compliance with the media and the educational system, they have managed to brainwash millions of Canadians into touting the party line without question. Critical thinking is gone. The right to critique is gone. You will be castigated, down-shouted. One-on-one, when you start to question these people, if you start to question true Liberal supporters and you start to question them, one-on-one you get one of two things. Either I didn't know that, and you get the intelligent ones will actually listen. The rebuttals you get are usually based on propaganda, not fact. But you get the other ones, and they give you this 1,000-yard stare, and then out comes a spew of bullshit and word salad. And when you try to pin them down on details, you get responses that do not address the questions of the details you put forward. I wonder where they learned that. Mr. Trudeau, you're a master at this. It's embarrassing to watch this individual when he's hit with a question that he's not prepped for, and you get this word salad and this absolute non-response, non-sequitur response out of him. This is our Prime Minister. It's disgusting. I sat down years ago when I was much, much younger, and I was exploring different philosophies and religions. And I sat down, one of the Jehovah's Witnesses came to my door, and I invited him in, which surprised the hell out of him. And we sat down, and I questioned him regarding his doctrine, regarding the tenets of his religion. Smoking, not COVID-19, just so you know. And that was my real exposure to total brainwashing. When I would hit him with a question that he could not cover in doctrine, you get that 1,000-yard stare, and then you'd get a spew of word salad that did not address what you had specifically brought up. And I tried end runs, verbal end runs to try to get an answer. No, I never got an answer because there wasn't one. They didn't have one, so they just spew out doctrine and word salad and non sequiturs, and that it was their response to this. And I realized I'm wasting my time even talking to this guy because all he's going to do is spew out doctrine. There's not a brain at work behind this. This is a pre-programmed response. There's no thought, no independent thought going into this. It is only, like I said, a pre-programmed response. But there's no intellect at work here. And that's where I look at the Liberal government. Their mishandling of this whole pandemic it's all there. Look at it. And people still vote Liberal. They spent the cupboards bare. They inherited a budgetary surplus and half of the deficit they'd left the Conservative government. They've managed to take that $300 billion deficit that Harper left because he never had time to finish his initiatives. And they've managed to more than double it again. Do you remember Trudeau's line about we will run modest deficits? And people believe that. The evidence is all there, and yet they lie, and you get that pre-programmed, brainless response from the true Liberal voters that they will just push the party line, and the media pushes the party line. God bless independent media, God bless Facebook, because information is out there that refutes, rebuts, and totally makes a complete lie of the Liberal story. The Liberal narrative does not hold up under close scrutiny. But still, people vote Liberal. So like I said, I have a grudging admiration for the machine that's been able to, the media, with the bribe that they've been given, the educational system cranking out these brainless, brainwashed morons, and a government that is so out of touch with hard reality. Contrast Trudeau to Doug Ford. There you see the difference between a leader, a true leader, and a poser, a posturer, a fake, a spoiled little rich kid put forward as a front man for a bunch of moronic elitists who have absolutely no clue about Canada or Canadianism. But you know what's really cute, and really I love this? If there is a free junket on the taxpayer's dime, they'll be right on it. They are in there like, hey, pigs at the trough. They don't seem to get it. Just because you have access to this money does not mean you have to spend this money. It's not a never-ending font. It's not a never-ending wellspring. This comes from the Canadian taxpayers. Ford respects Canadian taxpayers. He understands Canadian taxpayers. He understands the little guy. He understands the middle class. And he practices, he understands it's a sacred trust. The fact that you're administering hard people's hard-earned money. It is incumbent upon you as a true leader, a good leader, a responsible leader, to see to it that those monies are disbursed intelligently, wisely, and for the benefit of the people. This is the fiscal mandate of a government. Can any of that be said of the current Liberal government? Anybody who supports their fiscal initiatives is an absolute freaking fool, an idiot, a moron, a brainless sounding board. They even put forward a ministry of the middle class. That's another government department that picks the Canadian taxpayer's pocket. Instead of concentrating on private sector jobs that will stimulate the economy, they're padding the government with more public sector jobs that you will have to pay for. And yet, people still vote Liberal. I don't know, folks. I have some ideas. I might put them forward in a video once they coalesce a little more about what is needed, what I see as needed to get this country back on track. Initiatives that I think the Conservatives should put forward to galvanize the people, to garner the support they need to unseat these terrible, terrible, terrible animals that are running this government. They have to go. So, my fellow Canadians, there's my morning rant. Have a good morning, and to all of you, happy Easter, and to those of Slavic defense, Christos Voskres.